Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Cosa Music, inviting you to listen in conversation with friends, artists, and specialists in our music world. And also great people like Frank Bellucci. I had the pleasure of having him on. He's a longtime friend, a great drummer, of course, even though he plays left hand. I'm just kidding about that. But he's a great drummer and a great inspirational guy. Always a pleasure to have her on. And he came to our COSA workshops, and it's always great. Frank, thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, especially that I could sit here with no shoes on.
well, well, now you can't see without clothes, so you can't do that.
I'm wearing pants. Don't worry about it.
I wanted to ask you, before we get into the conversation of shaping your journey and all those great decisions that made you, like all of us, those decisions we make, which is the whole point of this. Tell us, like, where did it start for you? What was that first spark that got it going for you in the beginning?
Yeah, I guess, it's like you hear that most drummers, we were driving our parents nuts with hitting on pots and pans and tables and lampshades. So at 5 years old, my father, for Christmas, my parents got me. It's funny because I tell students, it was this little toy drum set, and the heads were made out of like paper, like this. You go, so as soon as Christmas Day, you got them, and then you hit pink, and then it was like, yeah, you put holes through them. So it was these, it started with the little kids sets, and then my father had a little bar near the house. He was partners with a friend, but he had a bar upstate New York with his brother. But this one, and downstairs there was, I think about it now. I don't even know, I was so young what kind of kid it was, but they found like this drum set. It was a big, probably like a 24 bass drum. It had one little tom, a snare, but there was, no floor tom, no hi-hat or cymbals. But he brought that home. It was in the basement from the bar he had. And that was like the first real kit. I couldn't even reach, the bass drum was probably up here. So it started, but like my parents said, 5 years old, I started hitting things and putting on the little, as we call it, the Victrola, little 45s, and playing along to them. And it was in the family. My cousin at the time played accordion, all the Italians with the accordion. And my other cousin played drums, and one cousin played sax and sang. So anytime we got together with the family, there was music, live music, bands. And then my father would sit me on the drums. So it started then. And ironically, my cousin who played the accordion, I always looked up to him. He was playing music for a living. And I mean, again, it was those days, that was your living. So he was working every night of the week, all over the country. And when I graduated high school, I was 17, and then I turned 18 in November. And he asked my parents, he said, because, I wasn't going on to college. I kind of knew that, now I look back, you could always look back. But as soon as I turned 18, he goes, I'll audition him. And if you let him, but I'm going to audition him, even though it's my cousin. He has to win the audition. And I did it. And that was it. I got in his band. And now as I turned 66, that's all I've ever done, play music, drums, and mostly every night of the week. I've been lucky to always work. But that's how it started, and now most of my friends are retired school teachers. And I look at them and go, oh, boy, maybe I should have did that.
Yeah, but they're not having as much fun as you've had and are having still, because you're still playing a lot.
Yeah.
Now I remember you back in some of the moments we had at COSA. Specifically, I remember we had a conversation about Jim Chapman, who was like a staple. He was there almost every year, right until the end when he couldn't come, and then we finally got him on the phone, and that was an interesting moment. But you were very close to Jim all along. And I think you came out to Costa with him, right?
Yeah, yeah. The probably the last time I was there, we picked them up, and my kids, as you know, they came. My family would come, and they were this big, my kids. So, I had the station wagon, and we picked Jim up, and both of my wife sitting in the middle seat in the back, trying to keep these two away. Who's getting, Jim sat in the front seat, and my wife made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and the 8-hour ride, whatever it was. Making a bunch of stops for the kids. And Jim was happy eating the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, playing on my dashboard. And something I'll never forget is, my daughter remembers, my son was really young, but Jim would turn around, and sing to them as he was playing on the dashboard. And so that's a memory that,
Nice.
is in my heart and my, for life. But yeah, so I drove him there, and it was a heck of a ride, I can tell you that, with you. Yeah, I loved the man. And, his wife at the time, Jim would do this jazz gig, like all the way out east of Long Island here. And I would fill in for him. His wife would give me a call. Could you go do the gig? So, I was pretty young. And so I got to play with some of these, monster jazz players, filling in for him. So he was always good to me, always showed up with my clinics. Even when I did the show at COSA, he sat right next to me. I have him singing. I have a video of that, by the way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I brought him up to sing. Yeah.
And
So
in fact,
he was a beautiful man to me.
yeah. No, in fact, when you sang the singing, because we used to record CDs back in the day when we did those concerts, and there was one that I'm not sure if he played and sang or if he just sang, but I remember we have him recorded in one of those CDs where he sang. I'm not sure if he didn't play. I'm not sure who played, but he was something. You just made me think of another story when. One year, when he learned that we were bringing changuito, this is way in the beginning of the COSA camps. I said, we have to have all the top people on the planet come to COSA. We usually have like 20, 25 people on faculty. You remember that was fantastic. And I said, we have to have Changuito, the man from Cuba, the guy who practically created the whole songo thing. We have to have him here. So it was a whole big deal getting him to the States from Cuba. We had to have him come through Canada, 2 special visas. It was a big deal. But when Jim Chapman heard, I spoke to Jim and I said, Changuito's coming. He says, oh, I have to sit with him and I have to talk to him, Mr. Independence. And then I told Changuito that Jim Chapman was going to be there. And he said, I've always wanted to meet Jim Chapman. He and I have to have a talk. So that year, Horacio Hernandez was with us. And I remember this, and I wish I was in the room. They're in their suites, and each one in their room, but apparently they ended up sitting up all the first night, the three of them together. Horacio translating, and Jim and Changuito, going at it like, you're the independence guy, you're the that whole thing. I can only imagine if you're a fly on the wall on that one.
Yeah, Jim. Actually, right when I brought him there, I remember we got out of the car after the hours and hours of driving, and that was the year Morello was there also.
Right.
And as soon as Jim and Joe see each other, so I just remember being on the outskirts, and I was like, all right, nobody talk. This is when you have to listen. Just listen to their conversation, both of them. And Morello. I don't have to tell you about Morello. So they had some funny things to say, but great time. And Jim was like that, always, him at the NAMM shows or the PAS shows. Jim would go there most of the time. I don't even think he had a room booked because somebody would always put him up, they would, he had the sticks and the pad, and Vinny talks a story of how Vinny went to sleep, and it was like him, Morello, and someone else in Vinny's room, staying up all night just talking. And Vinny goes, "I just went to bed. That was enough." Yeah, Jim Chapin.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of. I remember one year at Cosa that Jim's feet were giving up, and he couldn't walk so much, and so I asked the tech guys. You remember Reg and the guys? I said, Reg, I have a big favor to ask you because I said to Jim, you have to come, but we'll get you one of those golf carts that you can move around in. So that'll make it easy for you. He says, sure, no, that'll work. That'll be great. So then at the college, I said, can we rent, borrow, whatever, one of those golf carts? And they said, yes, but you have to have somebody that has a special driver's license for that. So
Oh,
I said, I beg your pardon, you're on the campus, you're not going anywhere. It's like being on the golf course. He said,
yeah.
no, these are the rules. We got to have somebody. So they said, we'll lend it to you, but someone in your team has to take the course. So I said to Reg, one of the guys in the team has to take the course. Otherwise, Jim won't be able to come. So they're all looking at me, you got to be kidding. I said, well, what am I going to do? This is the only way. So they actually did it, taking golf cart courses to drive it.
Oh boy.
And then worse than that was, we always had to look around at lunch or supper if Jim was actually in the cafeteria with all of us. And half the time he wasn't. So then I had assigned somebody, said, make sure Jim makes it from his room to the supper or lunch, because he's either giving a lesson in the hallway or in the bathroom, and then he never made it out because as people were going in, they're getting some tips and they're
Yep.
playing, and he's always got his pad and drumsticks, and he'll never make it. So I had to have somebody like bring him, and then they used to talk as they get to the dining hall and back. But he always did that, right? Amazing.
Yeah.
Right to the last day. But you knew him for a long time. How old were you when you knew him?
Yeah. I met Jim like when I was probably 18,
Wow.
19. But then I went on the road, so I didn't really get to study with him, maybe a couple of lessons. But then it became, when I got back, I really was serious with him. Jim, in those days, you would go for lessons, and it was just, I even think about even how the stores were, where now everything's online, and a lot of these, young people don't realize what the environment was, just being able to go to these local shops where it was just, drums, and you had all the different teachers and lessons going on. And you would go there for like hours, even you would take a lesson and then hang out and talk to everyone. And
Yeah.
it was just, a beautiful thing. So in those days, I would take, Jim would have, students lined up, and it was going to be like, the same thing when I took some lessons with Morello. If your lesson was at 1 PM, you knew you weren't getting in till 3,
Really?
because
Wow.
he
Wow.
was, one, by the time they, whatever, late. So Jim, I would take a lot of times the last lesson, if I could, of the day, whatever, So the store, the guys wanted to leave. I think it closed at 8. Come
Okay.
on, Jim, let's go, and Jim, and we would go outside, and Jim would finish on like the hood of my car, he'd still be like showing me something, pitch dark, we're on the hood of the car, and he's still going. And it's, and I'll just, not to keep talking, which I do, but something else was in like July of 81, I had taken a lesson with Jim, and then someone else went in, and then that's when they got the call that Harry was killed on the Long Island Expressway here,
Right.
going to one of his free shows that he would do. So I'll never forget that day where they called Jim on the phone, and he got the news that Harry. Well, first he got the news that Harry was in an accident, and then they called him out of the room and told him that Harry was killed in a car crash. And Jim, I'll never forget, he looked at all of us, and gave like a hug and a kiss, and he just walked out, and had to deal with that. So I was there when he got that call, and a bunch of us were.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
just a good guy, always a good guy to me. Like I said, he respected everyone. It didn't matter what style. He found the good in everyone, from the hardest hitter to the jazz player to the Latin player to whatever it was. He would always find something, of something positive to say.
yeah. No, he
And
was amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, he was
one in a
amazing.
million, Jim.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from losing your son Harry Chapin, who was one of the great singers of the time, and losing your son that way, that was awful. But I mean, he was always positive right to the last, his own last second, no
Yeah,
matter what. But I remember times I just had a flash of one time he walks into a class, and no, it was Joe Morello. Sorry, Joe Morello walks into a class, and he didn't see very well, right? So he's touching the snare drum, and I think Jim was in the room, and Jim said, "Jim, was Carmine in the room? Has Carmine been in here?" And it's true. Carmine, he had just given a class in that room, so the rim of the snare drum, I guess, had seen better days.
that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah, no, but Chapin. I mean, we could have a million stories about Chapin. I mean, he inspired so many people. I mean, every time he would come to Koza, of course, I would pull him aside and I say, explain the whole Moeller thing to me, because I didn't have a lot of time to study with people. I studied like a maniac with everybody I could lay my hands on growing up. But at COSA, I said, okay, I need you to show me this, and I want to work at this. So he would show me and patiently show me, take the time that needed, and his
yeah,
ideas and concepts on the whole. I mean, I play match grip. I started traditional way back, but when I went to university, I realized learning timpani and learning mallets and snare drum this way, it wasn't going to work. So I switched completely to match grip. So I said I'm still working on getting my left hand to match my right. So he really worked with me on that one, and he would take that. I would see him spending hours with people if they asked.
that's right. Yeah,
Unbelievable. I mean, a very selfless man, and very, very brilliant man. I mean, he was a very knowledgeable guy, in not just in drumming, but all
right.
kinds of subject, which was really nice.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. No, you weren't there that year. We had Bill Ludwig uh, giving a workshop on silent movies and sound effects. So we'd be sitting there, and Bill was invited, and he'd been doing this for years. It was a specialty of his. And all of a sudden, Jim would say, "Wait a minute, Bill. That wasn't in 1932. That was in 1933." And then Bill would look at him and say, "Man, you old geezer, how would you know I was?" And so they're going back and forth in a friendly way, of course. And so we're all going, "Oh man, wow," because they're both there arguing about stuff in history. Of course, we had nothing to do with it, but they're there, and these guys are just pulling out all this information, jabbing at each other, friendly, of course. But
yeah.
it was so nice, these icons. And now when we look back, we are so fortunate, Frank, to have guys like that around, and to be part of our lives, right?
No, I talked to Steve Smith about this. We've been texting about he just turned 70, Steve. And we text back and forth as far as how lucky we were to be around. Not only
Yes.
these greats, but these educators that it was they're gone.
Yeah.
And we're all getting up there in age, and it's just you were able to go and study with all these masters. Like I said, I would pick Morello's brain when he would come to Long Island. Jim, Al Miller, was the one that took me through all the big band reading, and so it was Alan Dawson. I mean, the list goes on, where not only great players, but they could teach.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm just, thank God that we were able to be around that. And you try to pass it on, and that was one thing Jim said to me, which, he, when I spoke to him when he was in the hospital, he's like, I give you the blessing to continue with Mola, and pass it on, because I really got into that. It's funny because I'm a lefty, as you know, so I learned it, traditional with my right hand. And then later on, he took me through match grip, but I still have all his handwritten sheets.
Wow.
So when I show students, I go, this is handwritten stuff from Jim Chapman. He had the date on it, So
Nice.
Stuff like that I cherish, Dave Garibaldi, before he came out with his books, I took a few lessons, He's another one I stay in touch with, and we talk about, it's, we're all getting up there, but I have his handwritten sheets, before his books even came out. So it's, lucky that, we got to know them, and, especially become friends with them. Jim became a dear friend. He came over to my parents' house. My mom fed him one time, so I think back to that. Yeah. Well, she fed everybody,
Oh, yes. I think your mother and my mother went to the same
the late
school.
grade, I go, when I was taking lessons with Frankie Malaby.
You studied with Frankie Malaby? So that
Yeah.
Nice.
And we would do, it was me and someone else, we would do like a group of 2 lesson. And Frankie would take the train out to Long Island. And I said, all right, one day you have to come over to the house. Because he was teaching, the town over. And I said, after my lesson, I'm going to take you to my, parents' house, and my mom would feed you. So he came over, he ate there. The late, great, Frankie Malaby. Yep.
Oh, wow. Now, I remember Frank Malaby because I used to fly to New York every month to study with all of these people. I went to Drummers Collective, and then I would seek out everybody I could to learn everything I could. And Frankie would take me, because I was studying congas and stuff with him, and Cuban drumming. But after our lesson, he would say, come with me. And we'd go to, what was that place? I think it was on 42nd Street in the subway. There used to be a record shop way back.
Oh, geez. Well, those were the days record shops all over, but yeah.
Yeah, those LPs, like stuff from Cuba, from Dominican Republic, like everywhere, all kinds of great things. And he'd say, here, you got to buy this one, and you got to buy this one. And he would personally take me there. Like, these guys are like,
all right,
amazing.
He would give me a list too of what to buy, what records. Yep. Yeah, another one, but so all you could do is, I guess we try to, carry on their the tradition and just carry on their teachings as best we can, and that's what I try to do. And just when I could show, and the good thing is now, as much as social media I'm not crazy about for a few different reasons, but the good part of it is you could tell, look at this, what Jim wrote me, or this one, and this is from this drummer and this drummer. Go search them out, and then most of the time you can find it either on YouTube, check out the real Songo now, check this clip out, check out, Roy Haynes on this clip. So you're able to, at least they're able to do it, where we, if we wanted to see Roy Haynes or Mel Lewis, big whoever, you had to go to wherever they were playing,
Right.
buy the ticket and go to the show and buy the record. It wasn't like, oh, let's go on YouTube and search this out. So,
Right.
And for us, and even anything for lessons, now everybody's, teaching on Instagram or YouTube, but we had to take that trip, whether it was hours
right.
away, to go study, and
Oh, yeah.
buy the record, go search the record out, go watch them play live, sit there, So it was a different time, but
Yeah.
You know,
No, no,
it's
it's a whole different thing now, of course. But I mean, we had to show up. We had to go there. We had to go spend all kinds of money. We had to really invest. I mean, serious
yep,
time and money
that's right.
in ourselves if we were interested. And of course, those of us who did, of course, gained a lot from it. Now it's just, I mean, there's something great about this that, I mean, I teach all over the world from wherever I am, you know, whether I'm in Calabria at my house there or in Cuba or here in Montreal or wherever I am, I'm teaching. Or I can see anybody at any time, just like
Right.
what we're doing now. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
easy. So that part is kind of nice. And it's nice because you can send each other a little clip as you're speaking. you know,
Right.
back in the day, that was not the case. You would show up and have your lesson and everything that you have to do around it, and it was a big deal. And then, of course, you know, the camps and I mean, but now it's different. What do you find, like with all the students you have? What do you find the attitude has changed or morphed? I mean, things change, as that's just a natural thing. But what has changed mainly from what your perspective is?
Uh, I guess the attitude of, if you really want to do it, you know, I've had people come, you know, older, you know, whatever, that play around, and they'll call me up. All right, I finally want to get serious. You know, I never really did this. I just been playing in bands, but I really want to get serious. And then after one lesson, you never see them again. You know, so it's because, you know, like, you know, like I'll have certain students that, you know, they'll tell you, look, this is not my life. I just want to get a little better when I jam with my friends or when I
Right.
do some gigs. Could you show me certain things and that? So they have a plan. I get that, you know? So you work with them that way. I'm not going to put big band charts out or rudimental books or orchestral books or, you know, I'm going to, okay, work on these little grooves and exercises. So you have that. But then you have some that, oh, I want to, you know, I want to do it all. And when you show them what it takes, you know, going back to even in the day where there were weeks where I took 3 private lessons. I mean, I was playing all the time already, so I was making my, you know, few bucks. But in those days, if lessons were with certain people $25, think of how much that was then. You know,
Sure. Oh
we're
yeah.
talking in the early '80s. So if I took, you know, one for big band reading with Al and one for, you know, or Dom. I go see Dom for, you know, stick control stuff and certain, you know, the things to work with Dom. And then Jim. Then if the drum center would have like different people come in and teach. So through that, on any given week, it could be 3 lessons that I'm taking, that I'm paying for.
Yeah.
So you talk about, you know, it was a commitment. You know, and anybody that came to town, even if I wasn't, you know, like, well, this one gonna teach. So Gary Chafee, you know,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Tommy Aldridge, Steve Smith, Dave Garibaldi, the list goes on, Rob Morgenstein, Joe Frankel, who lived right by me here. So it was, I would pick their brain. Billy Cobham. Billy Cobham, at those days, I think I paid $60 for the hour, whatever it was, you know. And then I drove him to his, whether his mom's house in Queens. That was great. You know, I got to drive him and talk with him. So you did all these, so, you know, sometimes I write the list of Pete Magadini,
Oh
all of
wow.
these players. Yeah, think about that. That came,
I
and
studied with Pete Magadini.
I was
Yeah.
like, I have to be in the same room with them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you paid for that. And, you know, some were, you know, that Dennis Chambers, some had the teaching thing together and some were just like, well, what do you want to do? So that's how you worked with them, you know? But it was something where that's what I mean by commitment. You know, if you really want to do it, you know, here's what it takes. I don't have a magic wand. I wish I did. I would use it. Otherwise, I would never practice anymore, you know? So we all, I think that's, You know, even the days of, like I said, going to gym and the stores where it was one student after the next. You know, we're all holding books this much. You know, and you're going. When I went to Al Miller, Al knew from between Jim telling him and he knew I was playing, and he goes, I know you could play, and I said, Al, I'm coming to you because I never went through like I do, any kind of rudimental stuff. The orchestral stuff, forget it. I never did that Cerrone or the Albright stuff. And I love big band, so I wanted to get my big band reading chops together. And that was Al's thing. So Al knew we didn't have to touch a drum set. I never touched a drum with Al. He had those pad setups, like I think it was the Ralph Pace pad
right.
set.
Yes.
Right? It made out of wood and the pad on top. So I would go and I tell my students with a stack of books. I'm not kidding you. And I think I was only doing a 45-minute lesson. We did every book in every lesson. And he would say, all right, you're good with that? Yeah, mark it. You're good with that? So now I go home. I have all these books, the Cerrone, the Albright, the Wilcox and all the different ones, the Pratt books, Buddy Rich charts. So I go home, and not only did I do my lesson, I knew the following week he would ask any questions, and if I said no, we were on the next page. So I didn't want to embarrass myself, and he would go, here we go. So I already had the next page down. Nice. Like I already said, let me get up to the next page where I'm not just sitting there. So it was where, that commitment that we had of, I really, if I want to do this, and this is going to be my life, which it end up, being, I want to, and so not to go on and on. That's basically, what I see is having the commitment and of if you really want to do it, like I said, if you want to learn certain things or, and I have a lot of players that play all the time around here that have hand problems. And, well, I'll give it to you this way. Rod Morgenstein has sent a friend of his to me. Now, Rod's a great educator, great player. But if the friend was having trouble, he goes, Frank's the guy to see for your hands. He'll help you. Last week, I get a student from Dave Garibaldi. Dave Garibaldi told him, he goes, you have to go see Frank Bellucci. And he goes, nice. Why? And Dave goes, I don't know why. Don't ask. Just go see him. So, that's how I know that, okay, I've made my mark, and even Steve Smith, when we talk about, some of the stuff he sends me. So I have a lot of people coming that I know they're just coming because they're having problems with the hands. And I show them some exercise. I try to help, but at least you know what you're doing. And then others that are just hobbyists.
Sure.
I want to learn more grooves. Or could you write, show me how to play this tune I'm playing with the band. So you do that. You work with everybody. And that's what I tell. If you're coming here, why are you coming here? But if you're going to say to me, well, I want to do this for life and for a living, what do I have to do? Well, now you opened a can of worms.
No. If you're serious, it can be done, and of course you've proven it. I mean, that's what it takes. It takes a lot of commitment, a lot of time, a lot of practice. I mean, we still practice. I mean, you still practice. I still practice.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I just it doesn't feel right. And you have to keep your machine oiled, and also your brain, right?
That's right.
It's physical as well as mental. I mean, because as your hard drive gets fuller by the day, but you have to keep certain things in perspective and in tune to be able to do the things that you want to do, right?
And like look, we're getting up there. Like I said, I'm going to be 66, so I thank God. I have students in their 20s that have carpal tunnel. Now, I play every day, not only the practice. I go out and play doubles and triples sometimes in a day. It's getting a lot harder, where I'll start 10 in the morning outside in the heat, 10, 11, play like a 3-hour gig. Then I have like a 3:30 or 4 o'clock start. I run there. And then I have like an 8 o'clock start somewhere. So if I didn't have the proper technique,
That's right.
it'd be over. So my point is just that alone, that I thank God having the right, between Morello and Jim and everybody, just, because again, there's drummers that are having, hand problems real early on. And I see that on a lot of the drum videos, like Instagram. I get it. I mean, the speed and the power that these drummers have is great. But sometimes I'm watching, they're 20 years old, 21, and they're bashing the drums. Well,
Yeah.
that takes its toll.
Sure. No, it's like anything else. It's physical. I mean, it's like being an athlete. You have to take care of this. I mean, there are warm ups, warm downs. There are weight of movements. You have to understand natural movements. I mean, you've been doing this for years, so you know, and we know. I mean, we know after a while how things work. You don't have to be a doctor, but there's things that are obvious. These muscles, these bones, these parts are made to be working a certain way. Now, if you mess with that incorrectly, well, it's like a hockey player going on the ice and then playing, on the ice cold or not doing the right movements or not warming up correctly. At the speed that they're playing and the intensity that they're playing, they don't last. You can't.
Right. It's exactly. So that's basically what I try to always keep in check. I mean, the days of hours and hours of going through stuff, none of us have that anymore. I don't have that time, but it's always just like checking, like I said, checking the gears and making sure that, all right, and there's always something like I tell when someone asks, well, what do you work on? What do you practice? And I remember Steve Gadd, this could be 40 years ago. I mean, this was a long time ago. I went to one of his clinics. I mean, it was a lot of years ago. And, well, what do you work on, Steve? And he was like, and again, with all the recordings he was doing and playing, he basically said from playing music and all these different, in these situations, that dictates what I need to work on. So that was something that I tell students, because of out there, 1 minute I'm playing brushes at a restaurant where someone's sitting right here, so I have to whisper. And like tonight, I'm going out playing, I don't know how many dance songs, one after the other, no ballads, no jazz, tomorrow brings something different. So what happens is from doing these things, I'll make like mental notes or even write it down. Like on a gig, I'll say, oh man, the next time I go to the drums, I have to work on this. Something didn't work right, or something didn't feel right. How come? You know what I mean? Or maybe I went for something and I'm going, you went for whatever it is. So from playing all the time, I really don't go through the books, but it's always, all right, I have to, get this in check and keep that going. It's just, so it's also the idea of not just what I'm seeing today, just playing drums, where drums now is just drums by itself. But, when we played drums, we knew we had to be with a band. That was what drums were. You played music.
Yeah. And here's the question for you. Which is, you bring me to this because I have this conversation with a lot of guys. When you first started, were you playing along with records a lot first and then start getting into the technique and the best practices or that kind of thing? Is that the way you went?
Yeah, exactly. My mother said I would sit there, again, 5, 6 years, with the little Victrola. I don't even, anybody would even know what that is. And sit there on like a pot or whatever and play along to it. Then I was lucky again playing, when we went from Queens to Brooklyn, then we moved out here to Long Island, I was 10 years old. My mother and father would put the drums in the car. I already was playing and going to houses. And then we started playing like, local little parties. So, and then at 12, I was playing some weddings with an accordion player, because I knew how to already play. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what a bossa nova or a rumba sounded like. But so it was always about playing in bands, and I thank God my parents always had everybody coming over my house,
Okay.
all time of day and night. So that went through from when I was 10, 11, 12, all through junior high and high school. It was playing in bands, playing
Nice.
music,
Yeah.
but playing along, right? And we had to play along the records where you're playing, now you got to get up and fix the needle, then it skips, right?
Turn
And you're like,
turn the
it was,
LP
yeah,
around.
right. Turn it over and come. Now they have the earbuds, their phones, they could put this, they could take the drums out and play along. So my point is, if you can't do it now with all this stuff that you have at your fingertips, we
Yeah.
had to work for it.
Yep.
And just like I said, playing along to a record. And there was no big system. We just put it on and play. And then if you're hitting the bass drum, the record's skipping. And it's like, so it was always playing along with musicians,
Yeah. Yeah.
And playing music. Yeah. So it was always the records
Yeah.
and then playing with people, getting together,
Yeah. And that's an interesting one because I had that same experience. And then I think that's kind of a common theme to a lot of the guys I've had on the podcast, because I would ask that question because it dawned on me. I said, one of the things that makes a really big difference is if you're playing a lot of music first, and it's like you're speaking, it's a language, like music is a language, drumming is a language. So if you're speaking a lot, and by the time you learn how to put it together, grammatical, etc., and then you're way ahead. And I remember when I first started going to, music school and university, I had a lot more experience as far as playing in bands and learning songs, because that's what we did. We just learned songs. I wasn't worried so much about technical stuff until afterwards. So that came first. So some people say, no, you should learn the technique first and then you play in bands. That was not my experience. And then when I got to a serious situation, well, it was just you spend 10 hours learning your paradiddles and controlling, doing Delecluze studies, doing timpani. But those are technical. Now you've played music, so all that music that you learned, whether it's jazz, pop, rock, or country, whatever it is, that plays into what you're doing, because now you do things musically a lot more than you would otherwise. Would you agree with that?
That's exactly the look. I was already, like I said, playing at that. I didn't even know what a paradiddle. I didn't know what a paradiddle was till I was later on in life, because it was that was it. It was, what do I have to do to play the song? And
Yeah.
it's funny because, and Danny Serafin, who's one of my idols, he's a buddy now of mine too. Actually, it's his birthday today. I just sent him a happy birthday. But then when we got like junior high and that time, I got in like the Chicago, before they were called tribute bands. We were just playing Chicago tunes,
Right.
Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that kind of. So I wasn't a reader, and I wasn't someone that could transcribe. So you talk about listening to a record, taking the needle off, put it on again. It wasn't, like I said, now if I have to transcribe something, put it on, pause, whatever. It's or someone could write it out for you. It's like, the point is, I had to listen to that and learn that stuff, which wasn't easy. So the ear training too. So a lot of it came around where, okay, how does this go? And to really know about odd times where when you listen to the Chicago stuff, I didn't know. I kept going like, what is this? Where's that going? I can't count that. How come? Well, so
Yes.
it was like you had to learn on the spot to how am I going to play that song? And I came from just playing music without knowing any of the other side as far as rudiments, reading, terrible, none of that. And somehow, luckily, I guess because my father always, and again, remember what we had on TV, like I still put it on now. That's the one good thing about YouTube. I watch the old Johnny Carson, Ed Sullivan, the Friday night with Wolfman Jack, all the shows we were able to watch that had bands, all the different bands coming on, and so that was always Lawrence Welk. As much as we
Oh,
goofed
wow.
on Lawrence Welk,
Yeah,
that band
yeah.
was great. So I would watch the drummers, and somehow from watching, and then seeing Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa, I kind of had a natural technique, if you will. But my
Yep.
thing was, no one was really playing lefty in those days.
Right.
So anytime I went to anybody, they put the stick in my left hand, like, in a traditional, okay, whatever. I didn't know better either. And so it was years later where, I was about 10 or 11 then, when someone saw me playing baseball. You're a lefty? I go, yeah. And they were like giving me a couple of lessons. So I go there, they go, you should hold the stick this way. And that really messed me up. I go,
So do you play both ways? Do you play left and right?
Well, what happened was I was so young, it didn't matter. But I was confused because then when someone said, you should hold it here, I go, I don't see any drummers holding a stick in their right hand in the traditional. Now there's so many more of a southpaws, But so in a way, it was good. Now that I was going back to, I know I'm getting off the subject. When I did Jim Chapin's book, I did it lefty and righty. The only reason why was because the drums, of course, are set up righty. Like I have the righty set here for the students. So I would go in my lesson, and he was already running late. So I wasn't going to start sitting there going, let me move this tom, let me move this cymbal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All I would do is take the snare drum, move it, take the hi-hat. The rest of the drums, and I moved the floor tom that was on this side out of the way. And the ride cymbal was always on this side for the righty. So I started going to the lessons. So I was playing like this across on the ride, hi-hat, snare, and then the bass drum. So when I would come home, I'd be like, wait a minute, let me see if I could, right hand. So I started doing his book lefty, then I did it righty. Because I would go to the lesson and show him, on the right hand, I could still, play. So even this day, I have like rides on both sides. Nowhere near as good as I did it then. I mean, I still try to mess with, like on this set, I have 3 hi-hats set up and rides on both sides. So I still mess around with doing like the chafy stuff, righty. The New Breed book, which I like using, the Gary Chester book.
Yes.
That stuff. Jim's book, the John Riley stuff. So especially when I have to show a student on a righty set.
Right.
Like I go right to the college here. I just do a couple of private lessons, 5 Towns College, right in the neighborhood. So there's one set in the room. So if I got to show, because someone will go, could you show me that? And I go, all right, now let me switch my brain because I'm not going to switch the drum. So I could basically show, certain exercises playing them righty, so I kind of was forced into that. But
interesting.
Yeah. But the lefty thing in traditional was weird when someone showed me that. But yeah, so I forgot what even the question was.
No, I mean, I said you're playing lefty and right. You could.
Yeah, I try to,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm a right hand person, but then some things I would see like somebody like Simon Phillips play, and I said, man, that's beautiful that you don't have to move across. And Lenny White and all of these guys or Billy Cobham. I mean, you'd see these guys play, and I'd say that makes so much sense. So now I do some more basic things that way when I can, just because I think from an orchestration point of view, and I also have, as you know, my whole hybrid kit playing. That I have all of these weird things everywhere. So I decided, well, why not play just whatever you hit first, with whichever hand happens to be there, and that's the way I designed that concept, and it really works. I mean, obviously, somebody like Simon Phillips, I didn't know he was originally a right-handed player, and midstream in his career, he switched totally left, which makes total sense if you have the patience to do it. Why not?
Right. And those days, they talk about Ringo. That's what made those fills like so kind of unorthodox because righty set, but if you watch him play the lead, it's lead fills with his left hand. Pretty
That's
cool,
yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
it
That
shows
was
you how, certain things technically became their sound.
yeah.
And that's really cool, because of a certain approach that, let's face it, we could play the Beatles stuff and even Charlie Watts' stuff, but you can't cop that, it's their thing. And that's a beautiful thing, when it really is something where, wow, that groove and that song is coming from because of that certain approach or how they play, and that, that's pretty cool. But it's, and again, you try to, like I have students that are not sure. They're like, well, should I play? I'm a lefty and I do things righty and stuff. So my way of looking at it is it's the feet, as you know. Like I'll go, all right, sit on my lefty kit. Oh no, my left foot, I don't have it. I go, all right, so you probably should sit on a righty set, because your right foot is the one you want to, but you could play open sticking.
That's
And
right.
you could go
That's
on the
right.
ride, with your But if so, when there's someone confused, but it always goes down to the feet, like what ability you have down below, So it's
Yeah.
I still
And
mess around on the righty set, and like you do on this huge set here. I have a double bass set here, and toms all over the place. It just kind of forces me to get this to move, and especially gigs where I'm just going.
right, right.
So you try to you work on things that Vinny said something to me 2 years ago. He was doing the huge arenas with Sting, and he's like, everything's up here, up here. So when he would work on is all the little muscle groups. Like in other words, when you go to practice, you have to do something else. I show my students. You have to do opposite of what you're always doing to keep that in check. So there's
Right.
times when I'm doing a lot of, especially now when winter comes, these outside gigs are done. So in order to work, I do like these duos and trios. So I'm playing this low, whispering,
Right, right.
playing just like on a snare and a hi-hat or whatever. And so everything is all down in here. So when I come back here, I go, all right, don't forget about your arm strokes. And so I try to keep, all the muscle in gears in check,
Right.
kind of thing. And that was something cool that, that dawned on me, like, all right, always try to, if you're playing one style all the time, but just kind of touch upon even volume. That's the other thing I see with drummers is the loudness and the side, like down here, and I do this, and I do it just to kind of break chops. Someone comes and I just say, let's play through stick control. And right off the bat, I'm watching their strokes and their hands and everything. And all I'll do is take the stick and go poof right on top of their sticks. 2 inches. Now, and it's like all of a sudden they can't because they don't have this to rely on. So that's something to show them, like, right here, like you should still be able to, play that.
Right, right.
You're relying on one technique to play. And you have to, analyze that. If you're doing everything and everything's up here, even if that's not your style of music, let your body feel what it takes to play here and really relaxed. I give them an exercise. I go, all right. And then the other thing is, as you know, I'll go, just play me a groove. I don't say a word. I watch their hands. I watch how they're playing. Okay. And especially the tempo. So I go, okay, great. That groove, you can play it. That's your groove. But now you're going to play it 2 inches off the drums, and I'm going to put the click on. And I put it on 40. And they have
Brutal. Nice.
and they're looking at me going, because they just finished playing doom, got doom, doom, right? Doom. So I go, now you're going to play doom, got, go. And it's like their whole body is, they can't even even understand that tempo and volume. So that's what I mean by putting yourself through different things to let your body feel it. It really helps. It helps everything you're playing.
Sure.
So,
And also, you're right about that. Also about playing from this high, but having the intensity and not losing that intensity and the sound that you still would have with this. I remember once when Chris Coleman came to Kosa, and he was playing, and he was really, really close to the drums and moving like this, but having such a beautiful sound and full sound. I said, Chris, how did you develop that? That's really amazing that you don't have to go like this all the time to have that nice full sound. When you do this, you have the same sound. That's an incredible control. And he said,
Yeah.
well, his father was a preacher on the radio, and they would play music live in the studio, so they'd have to keep it down, but still make a groove, right? So you're playing groove music, but it has to be this volume, and to make it with the same intensity, that's a lot of work. So I mean, to your point of playing this high, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and not lose the volume. And this is not playing surface. This is playing, making real sound and having a voice and having the good sound that you always develop, even at this level. But it's at this height. Yeah, very good point.
And the tempo, tempo should not, and volume should never take away the intensity, and it just, that to play that groove tempo and nice and slow and feel that. And it's the same with the book Stick Control. I don't say a word. I put up page 5 and I just said, number 1 is a single stroke, righty, then lefty, then doubles. And I just watch them play it. And 9 out of 10 times, as soon as they played a single stroke, you're hearing an accent. They just because it's natural.
Yeah.
And then I go, let me ask you something. You see any accents written in this book? There's not one. So soon as now, whatever they just played at that fast tempo, because they're real. And now I say, all right, now just here. No accents. So even that, making them aware of, you're practicing this book the wrong way already. So understand, the second book, Accents or Rebounds, then he added accents. But Stick Control doesn't have one accent in it. The idea is to make every one of those sound like you're playing a single stroke, going from righty, lefty lead, doubles. It ain't this. That's what you're used to. So when you show them that you're playing it the way you always do, it's not going to get any better. You have to take yourself out of that comfort zone. Let your body feel uncomfortable, and that's that's the rude awakening that I say. Some drummers, they want to face it in the mirror. Look, it took me a long time too, whether it's ego, you're like, ah, damn, I could do that, especially if I was doing something with someone else and I could, and they could do, I go, I'm going to do this. I remember, and I bring this, when I first got into the Gary Chester New Breed book, okay?
Yes, yeah.
I was still at home and I was like, all right, I'm going to get this. I think he had he has the 3 hi-hats and all those routines, which are great. So I was like, one of my friends, we always had that little cut. And he goes, yeah, I just did routine, blah, 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 blah. And I read through that. I'm going, yeah, really? I got to do that. So sit down there, hours, I'm doing it. And one day it hit me. I'm playing and I'm going, I got it. My mind's going, I got it. Don't breathe. I remember hearing myself go, don't move now. Don't breathe. Stay. And I'm going, what? So I stopped and my body went like I was so tense doing it. So what happened to me was my ego or whatever it was took over. So I was going to get this by no matter what. Meanwhile, I did it all wrong because I did it where I was tense. And like now with my students, they laugh. I go, if we're playing something, you're relaxed. I want to be able to talk to you. You should be able to sing. You should be able to breathe. That's how you know you own it. I go, I did this and I was doing it by no matter what. And when I stopped, I felt like I was hit by a truck because I was so tense doing it. Yeah. I'm thinking, don't breathe. Breathing, that's what you have to do is breathe. So I had to relearn it. I had to go get rid of any ego, whatever, and go, all right, you have to just go back to, because you can't get something, by any means. You have to realize, how am I working on this? Because that's going to become muscle memory. You know, you play intense and you're doing something, that's not going to go away when you're on a gig.
No.
So you have to be aware of, you know, everything that happens. And it's tough. And it's tough to face because it's looking in the mirror. And I go, some drummers just go, I'll just do what I do. And others, like us, go, you know what? Who am I kidding? I'm kidding myself. Who am I trying to impress? I'm kidding myself. So you have to face it like, all right, how am I doing this? Whether it takes me another few months, fine. You know, it's like you have to do it right. And that was a rude awakening of, I'm going to get this no matter what. Yeah, don't move, don't breathe. What?
Yeah. No.
So,
I mean, you know, to breathe naturally. I mean, you have to. Otherwise, the music also suffers. Not just you, but after a while, even the music suffers. But you have a book. You wrote a book, Double Bass Drums, right?
not double bass. And if I don't do this soon, especially at my age, I wrote it like in the 80s called Feet First.
Feet First,
And,
that's right. Yeah,
you know, I'm a terrible businessman. So even talking to Rob Wallace a couple of years ago, he goes, you know, these days you could just put it online. You don't even need a physical copy. Just get it out. So, and students of mine go, what happened to your book? If Feet First, it wasn't for double bass. It was, that's why I didn't want to you could use it for double bass. It was basically the whole thing around that was balance. And I would always work on something else with drummers. You know, we sit on this throne and the hardest thing is to balance our bodies.
right.
Let's face it, this is so unnatural. The position we're in already is unnatural. So the idea was I would work on all patterns with just my feet. So I started going, you know, and I used the heel down, heel up, the heel toe, you know, certain rocking thing. So I would utilize these techniques and play these grooves with just bass drum and hi-hat. So I would start hearing like doom, and it was just the feet. So I go, wait a minute, I'm just gonna write this Feet First, blah, blah, blah. And I did. And like I'll show students here because I have a few copies and they're like, you got to get this out there. It's great. You know, even Vinny at the time saw it and Joe Franco wrote me a nice thing and a certain, you know, Chapman. So yes, it was Feet First and I should get my button gear and get it out there. Yeah, yep. Again. So you're someone else that reminded me. So maybe this will finally be the extra push.
Yeah. So I'll be calling you. I'll be calling you, Frank.
Yeah. And I showed it at the camp. I brought I brought like certain exercises, sheets that I gave out. Yeah. You know, with it. Yeah.
I remember that.
But I need to and that was the main thing, balance. Like I watch with drummers, you know, how your body is. And you think about what we do. We're sitting on this uncomfortable thing, and we're moving here, we're moving here. So as an exercise, I have the students sit, and anything we do on the pad, we go to the snare drum. Now we add a foot pattern. So now when we're sitting here on the pad, it's easy. You're just sitting with your, feet down and you're on a pad. So now we go to the snare drum. Now you don't have that rebound. You have a different feel. And now you have to be consistent with sound. A pad doesn't matter. You don't really hear the difference. And now we're going to add a foot pattern, which throws this in the game now. So now this, right. Then I have them go, before we do any with the drum set, I have them playing on each drum by itself and cymbal. So the idea is when we play drums, every snare drum, hi-hat, bass drum, that's where it all starts. That's what you have. That's the number one thing, foundation, and maybe a ride. But now we have these who has all these toms and cymbals and this and that around. And so what happens is when we play, a lot of those things are just split second. You go around, done, cymbal, crack, back to the. So they're not really aware of what happens when you're here and you go here. So when I have them go through a book or rudimental book or rudiments, and on the snare here, now I say, for me, my floor tom, righty, I go, now you're going to play that whole solo here. So it's not going to be a split second floor tom thing. So now their body's staying like this. So we're going through like maybe a Wilcoxon thing, right? Now they're playing their feet. So now they're seeing how, oh man, my back or this doesn't feel right. Or, so I have to so by making them stay on each instrument around them, it really shows them how things change. The weight shifts, to be aware of that. So that was my biggest thing. And even now, I always watch the drummers, I'll sit here. I have a small little room, but as soon as they sit down, I watch their balance, I watch how everything works, And the other thing, as you know, when they're reading a chart, they're looking here and the cymbal starts going all over the place because they're, right hand, all of a sudden I'm going, oh boy, you're at the bottom of the cymbal. You have a wash going on, I go, so now, and some actually are missing the cymbal. So it shows them, and I've done it too with students, try practicing with your eyes closed or the lights off, because you set up drums a certain way. We just set up drums. Oh, the tom should go there, snare, hi-hat basically here, right there. But when you shut your eyes and you let your body movements take over, that's a whole, where does your body, like I could see this table here, I hit it. But if I'm like here, and now I'm here, and I just want, where does this naturally go? That's how I set up the drum. So a lot, you put it in perspective of close your eyes and see, let your body tell you where it should be, not your eyes,
Right.
And so that's why I even start with snare at the bass drum, snare, hi-hat, and the ride. That's your main thing. I want to see and hear you play that. You say it all on that. That's how I go to gigs most of the time. No tom, with the lower jazz gig, snare, hi-hat, ride, and the bass drum, boof. Because when you could say it on that, the whole line, you could say it on anything.
Sure.
And that's so important. I see beginners that they buy a 10-piece kit, so they're not even sure where things should be. So it's the balance and setting up the drums. Vinny talks about his roadie, his tech. The tech says, Vinny wants it where someone's dealing cards. Like you see, everything's right in here. So
and that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Nice. Interesting. Well, listen, Frank, I mean, we could go on for days, and
I know.
But I really want to thank you for taking the time and sharing this with us. And I mean, all of this information is all helpful because we're always searching for the right way, the best way, and it's a constant. I mean, way we have it, and we're all built differently too, right? So we have to take those things into consideration. But it's always good to explore how can we do something better. And also the other thing too is as we grow older, or you have injuries, you have to make adjustments. I mean, I had torn my ligaments a few years back, and when I went for my X-rays and all of that stuff, the doctor looked at me. He says, I know who you are, and I can tell you right away what happened. But let me show you. So he says, this is what happens for someone like you. Like, they're worn out, they're torn. So now you gotta adjust. And my right cymbal that was here, now it came down here. So
Yep.
And I used to ask Ndugu Chancellor because he used to have his cymbals right up here facing this way, and I says, Ndugu, I don't get it. He says, no, this is natural because I'm like this, and the cymbal is right there. But all of us would play like this. So now I said, well, that was. I mean, I could do that, and I didn't feel the pain. Maybe I had pain, but didn't feel it. I'm not sure. But now I have my cymbal right there. I don't even. Not move. So you make those adjustments as time goes on. So
especially as your body changes. Amen. I've been at schools, and I work with the drummers, and the ride's here, the town's full, and I tell him, I go, let me ask you something. When you go home naturally and you maybe watch TV, are you watching TV with your arm up here, or do you eat up in here? So I go, no, you you have your body's naturally relaxed, right? When you're right. And when you eat, there's a certain we're not like this. So I go, why is this like that? You can't last like that. So again, make it to where it's the most natural, and take away the toms. That's what I mean. Take them away. Start with that ride where it should be. Then work around there. Maybe you have to move the toms over this way. But don't let, because you want to fit a drum or a drum there. And the same thing with the hi-hat drives me nuts, because they'll have a tom and their foot's out like this.
Yes.
15 inches away, and they're sitting. I go, the first thing is your bass drum, your hi-hat, your snare. Sit down, see how your feet and legs naturally work. And what's the most position where you're not going to hurt your back, whatever, And again, watching a lot of the young players play these days, as we said, we all were full of that. Superhuman, Superman, where nothing hurt. But let's face it now, just put on your shoes for the...
Yeah. Or you don't want to get there sooner, so you have to be careful. Anyway, So Frank, I want to thank you, and we'll continue this, I'm sure, another time, and we'll cross paths. And I want to thank you for doing this, and I'm sure everybody has learned a lot from this. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. And as I always say, to be continued. Thank you.
Well, and I don't know if Dave came home yet, but Dave Garibaldi, he like a week ago, I'm in Italy. I don't know if you run into him, but I said his brother-in-law is a well-known drummer there. And has a school. I go, well, good.
Franco Rossi.
That's an excuse for you to get me and my family. I'll come teach, and I can finally take them to Italy. So now I have you too. So that's two of you.
Calabria, here you come.
All right. Well, give my best to your lovely family, and God bless, and take care of yourself. And thanks for this.
No, thank you, Frank. And as really to be continued. Now you threw one at me, and be careful what you ask for is what I say.
I know, right? The old.
Thank you, man.
Take care.